Hi everybody! In this video, I will be showing you how human beings have become infested with parasites. Parasites have been around for a very long time, longer than we have, and they're very intelligent species. They've adapted to become covert and asymptomatic while wreaking havoc. Parasitic species have evolved to escape being noticed while they're able to feed off a person's nutrients, their well-being, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And that's what they've been doing to humans for a very long time. I'm going to show you how parasites are directly responsible for the vast majority of physical diseases. Parasites cause mental and emotional disturbances, everything from anxiety and depression to full-blown schizophrenia. Parasites take over your life force, they take over your mind, they have you crave and do things that are more beneficial to their desires rather than your sovereignty and free will. There's a lot of evidence that will show that what I'm talking about is in fact true, and this is very intense information to take in. It's a lot to actually believe that something so small can have such an impact, but all things are sentient, all things have souls and spirits, and as I will talk about, parasites have specific spiritual impacts and lead a person astray from their highest and full potential. This is an extremely important topic that I feel must be shared and just given the merit that it deserves because of how significant it is and how much people are being affected by it. A lot of people who are dealing with the impact by unexplainable gut issues or autoimmune issues or things that aren't readily explainable but can be traced back to parasites because people are cleansing and finding that their symptoms and issues go away. I'll be showing you scientific and practical evidence of why this is true and also some case studies and how people have shifted once they've gotten parasites out of them. So I hope that in this video I'm able to communicate to you the importance of this topic and inspire you to cleanse these invaders out and see how much your life can elevate and become better in a million different ways. Where are they? I'm on a mission. I'm gonna find them and expose them. They're not gonna get away with this any longer. I'll show them. I'll show you. It's real. Believe me. There they are. I know how to find them now. Their time's up. It's game over for them now. They seem so small and harmless, but they're unscrupulous. If you only know the things they've done, you will know, and I'm going to show you. Sometimes things can be right in front of our faces the entire time, but we weren't able to see them until we really take a closer look. This is quite literally the case with parasites. For example, did you know that Botox is derived from the parasitic bacteria known as Clostridium botulinum, the same parasite that causes botulism? We're going to view parasites from the lens of their pathogenic nature and create cohesion by bringing two often separate concepts into one unified concept to create greater awareness. A parasite is normally defined by its nature of living on another species or a host, and that's about it. And a pathogen is defined as some type of microorganism that causes disease. A parasite is a pathogen because not only does it live on a host, but it also causes disease. And a pathogen is also a parasite because not only does it cause disease, but it also lives on another host. Both parasites and pathogens act in similar congruent ways. For example, a so-called virus is known to invade and manipulate a host cell in order to replicate. And some so-called single-celled parasites also invade and manipulate a host cell in order to reproduce and replicate. Bacteria, as they're called, also can act as parasites by stealing nutrients like lipids and iron. And like parasites, fungi also have extremely intelligent evasion mechanisms, such as changing their cell wall composition to become invisible to immune recognition. Sometimes microorganisms can act in a beneficial or at best neutral commensal way, but when they act as parasites, they fall under the definition of a parasite. And this also answers the question which sometimes people ask, which is, aren't parasites good for you? And the answer is, parasites are never good for you. However, there are some healthy bacteria and other microorganisms that can sometimes play a symbiotic role. So in this video, we're going to be discussing parasites and other microorganisms that are playing the role of a parasite. Where do parasites come from? Why do they infect people? Parasites that affect humans are primarily transmitted through animals and insects. In other words, they're zoonotic. Currently, zoonosis is recognized as the primary way in which disease is transmitted to humans. The current estimates are about 65 to 70%, but it's possible that it's actually much higher. Sometimes parasites are transmitted when humans come into contact with wild animals through hunting or coming into contact with dead animal carcasses. For example, leprosy, one of humanity's oldest recorded diseases, is now known to be caused by Mycobacterium leprae and Mycobacterium lepromatosis, which come from nine-banded armadillos and red squirrels. The vast majority of current zoonotic transmission of parasites comes from domestic livestock. The first way is through agricultural waste that infects the environment, soil, and farmland where food is grown and seeping into drinking water.
One quiet creek in Cary wouldn't normally make you take a second glance. That was until a few days ago.
Yeah, Poverty Run, which flows through Cary and eventually leads out into the Sandusky River. It's been the color red since this weekend, and tonight we're learning more why.
The cause is pig poop. Quote, the cause was identified as an over-application of liquid manure leachate, which ran into the creek. Wyandotte Pork, the responsible party, is working with Ohio EPA, the local Soil and Water District, and ODNR's Division of Wildlife to address the issue, end quote.
If you lived near a swine spray field, not even the CAFO, but the waste disposal field, you were 3 times more likely to have a MRSA infection.
We've already had bouts of swine flu, or H1N1 as they prefer to refer to it. That particular swine flu incident was originated on a farm here in North Carolina. There's approximately the same number of hogs in North Carolina as there are people. Between 8 to 10 times the amount of feces is produced by a hog, an adult hog, as compared to an adult human.
My sister, she have asthma, and her brother, he have asthma. He's 3, and we don't know what she might have. I have asthma, I have sinus, I have sarcoidosis, that's the bacteria, and I have a pacemaker, which is 6 sinus syndrome. But mostly everybody in this neighborhood got asthma or either cancer. My neighbor there died from cancer probably just last year. My nephew down the street, he's got cancer. He's in terminal cancer, stage 4. Not a smoker, not a drinker. And it's not in his lungs. It's in his lymph nodes.
Parasites are also transmitted through the waste and hair of household pets. The most common parasite from dogs being a species of roundworm called Toxocara canis, and the most common from cats being a protozoan parasite known as Toxoplasma gondii. Since dogs frequently lick their anus, where parasite eggs reside, there's actually a route for Toxocara canis to be transmitted through those dog kisses that people love to give. And for cat owners, it can be as simple as inhaling toxoplasma while cleaning a litter box. The primary way humans are infected with parasites is through ingesting eggs or cysts from contaminated food, the highest likelihood being from blood-containing meat and raw meats like sushi. Raw milks and cheeses are highly likely to contain parasites, and eggs carry a risk as well. And that bacon that people love to eat so much, well, this is one of the most dangerous foods to consume. If it's not cooked all the way through, it's highly likely to contain some of the worst disease-causing parasites. You just gotta take a closer look to really see things in perspective. I mean, really close. Even closer. Almost there. There. This parasite is known as Trichinella spiralis, and in humans it causes trichinosis, which ranges from asymptomatic to fatal. Some of the symptoms of an infection include intestinal discomfort, fever, edema of the eyelids, photophobia, chills, weakness, and cardiac and neurological complications. When parasites are not zoonotic in origin, they can come from an imbalance within the body itself. For example, a diet high in starches, such as wheat or rice, lowers the pH in the GI tract through microbial fermentation, creating an environment where parasites can flourish. This allows external parasites a more favorable environment to survive, or opportunistic parasites like Candida, which are normally present within the body, to overgrow and become toxic. Starches usually contain gluten, which in Latin literally means to glue. Gluten causes the intestinal villi to become flattened or glued down and unable to absorb nutrients. All starches have a glue-like nature to them and encourage the buildup of mucus, toxins, and parasites in the body by obstructing the tissues and triggering inflammation. All gastrointestinal disorders, such as IBS, Crohn's, colitis, leaky gut, diverticulitis, etc., are highly correlated to parasites and the body's inflammatory response to them. The difference between an unhealthy GI tract and a healthy one is like the difference between a swamp and a river. Swamps emit gases, become a habitat for invasive species, and have highly acidic soil and water that limit nutrient availability. Flowing rivers have high levels of oxygen and nutrient transport and are clean because of their fast-flowing nature. When you eat food that is hydrating and moves quickly through the GI tract, you help create an environment that is incompatible with parasites. An immediate and obvious symptom of parasite infestation is contrarily both weight gain and weight loss. If the parasites are transmitting persistent, intense cravings for their preferred foods while siphoning nutrition, disrupting hormonal balance, and slowing down the metabolism, the result will be weight gain. If the parasites are siphoning too many nutrients and creating immune responses that suppress the host's appetite, the result will be weight loss. Some parasites are overt. They are recognized publicly and people are aware of their symptoms. Not every parasite is apparent in its disease-causing effects. Many parasites are asymptomatic and can live in the body for up to 30 years or longer without ever having been detected. Such covert parasites have adapted extremely intelligent evasion mechanisms to avoid destruction by their host. Some of the evasion mechanisms include antigenic variation, constantly changing their surface proteins, molecular mimicry, disguising themselves as host tissue, and immunomodulation, suppressing or manipulating the host's immune response. They also hide inside host cells or immune-privileged sites with limited immune patrolling, such as the eyes, the central nervous system, or the liver. Some parasites create self-destructive immune responses or autoimmune reactions in their hosts. For example, the fungus Beauveria bassiana, which affects insects, activates and manipulates its host's immune pathways to destroy its own brain cells. A physical response of the body highly correlated to parasites is the formation of cysts. Cystic acne is a known formation of bacteria deposits surrounded by self-protective biofilm due to the bacteria Cutibacterium acnes. The body itself may sometimes create cysts to trap and isolate parasites as it sends white blood cells to fight them. Swollen lymph nodes are also typical responses by the body to invading parasites. Some parasitic cysts grow in the body after larvae drilling through the intestinal wall migrate to an organ in the body to germinate and form a cyst. One example is hydatid disease caused by Echinococcus tapeworms. These slow-growing cysts invade surrounding tissues and form large, destructive masses in organs like the liver or lungs. Some viruses and single-celled parasites form tumors by hijacking the cell function of the host and causing proliferate reproduction. These cysts are sometimes confused to be cancerous tumors. One parasite that is commonly misdiagnosed as a tumor is the liver fluke. The chronic inflammation, biliary obstruction, and tissue damage they cause can appear almost exactly identical to a malignancy on medical imaging scans. Other parasites that form cysts are protozoans such as Entamoeba histolytica, which is a very common parasite but is said to be asymptomatic 90% of the time, and helminths such as Taenia soleum, otherwise known as the pork tapeworm, which can be asymptomatic for many years and potentially show up at a later time.
A medical mystery solved. A woman started acting strangely, and initially surgeons thought that she had a brain tumor.
But when they opened her up, a surprising find. Eyewitness News reporter Joe Torres spoke to her about the bizarre diagnosis.
The good news is I don't have cancer.
That's also surprising news because doctors at Mount Sinai Hospital thought just the opposite until last September when neurosurgeons opened up Rachel Palma's skull. They fully expected to find a marble-sized malignant brain tumor. Instead, they found a parasite. It was January of last year when strange things started happening to the 42-year-old from Middletown. She'd suddenly drop her coffee mug. She couldn't remember words. She tried calling deceased relatives.
Blood infection, according to Dr. Weber. Another medical doctor of that era, Dr. Alphonse Weber, conducted similar experiments since the early 60s and realized before the doctors of the Max von Pettenkofer Institute that the agile corpuscles were the cause of the blood infection. He filmed the experiment in the 60s to 80s and created thereby unique evidence. The microparasites described by Dr. Weber that you can see here can be found in the tissue of all cancer patients. Some examples. Here you can see a blood sample that has been dried over a flame. The patient suffers from leukemia. Here you see the blood sample of a patient suffering from liver cancer. Here the blood of a patient with bladder cancer. And this is tissue from the bladder carcinoma. You can clearly see the lively movements of the microbes. Here the diagnosis is that of lymph node metastasis. This is an almost mature gamete. He can be found in the space between the cells. And here a blood sample after a mammal surgery. You can see a dying leukocyte. Patient is suffering from breast cancer. Diagnosis: cell complex of an uterus tumor. This is the blood of a patient suffering from a lip carcinoma. And here cells of a lung carcinoma. In the lower left part you can clearly see red blood cells in whose innards there are lively microparasites. Here a tumor cell from a bladder carcinoma. You can clearly see the vacuoles. String-shaped structures. All recordings have one thing in common. You can see certain reoccurring types of microbes in all of them. There is no tumor tissue without these microbes. There is no blood of a cancer patient without those microparasites. They belong to two species. A. String shape, grown up. Their length is 2 times that of a red blood cell. B. Stick shaped. This is the most commonly found shape. The length of this gamete is about the diameter of a red blood cell. The youth form of both species are round or oval shaped. In normal blood tests, those parasites normally remain undetected, as they are hiding inside of the red blood cells. They are perfectly camouflaged by the exterior of the blood cell. The inner of the blood cell also offers plenty of food in the shape of oxygen and hemoglobin. We let the cell burst. She's dead now. The supposed organelles would have to be dead as well. But the opposite happens. The corpuscles now jump to life even more, and they even thrive. We can see how they swim lively and very actively in all directions away from the cell. Let's have a closer look at this. We can clearly see a flow direction in this image from the top right to the bottom left. This movement is an evaporation wave. In and with it, all the components of the preparation flow passively in the same direction. Right here, an immune cell has burst. Its content is set free. The supposed cell organelles spread in all directions. We can see this clearly. Some of them swim actively against the flow of the current, and there is only one explanation for that. They are individual life forms with astonishing energy reserves by the way. That cell material could not behave like this. And now a nice example. Here we see a parasite, the youth form of a gamete, which has been caught. The vacuole receives the parasite and we can clearly see its attempts to escape. We see the active movements of a life form. The assumption that this microbe is part of a dead cell is absurd. The parasitical microbes eat erythrocytes, red blood cells. Here we see a swarm of microbes. They have started eating up the hemoglobin of the cells. Now they have already eaten up half of the erythrocyte, and here only the empty membrane of the cell has been left over. The parasites have swarmed out and searched for new victims. The empty shell is the proof that the hemoglobin has been eaten up, meaning that the corpuscles have a metabolism. But even the grown-up parasites have a healthy appetite, as we can see. Here we see parasitical string-shaped microbes, and here we see stick-shaped ones in an emptied membrane of a red blood cell. Here we can see a stick-form parasite eating away at an erythrocyte. And here a string-shaped form pulls an erythrocyte behind it. A good example for active movement capabilities. The parasites eat, that's very clear. The damages to the blood tissue and the increase in number of the corpuscles is proportional. Blood tissue becomes corpuscle tissue. Multiplication. Like most single-cell organisms, the corpuscles can either proliferate through cell division or sexual interaction. Here we can see conjugating gametes which press against each other tightly. This leads to oocytes developing from the fertilized gametes. This proliferation is difficult to detect under a light microscope. Easier to see is the cell division process. This takes place especially when the gamete is endangered, for example, when it is being radiated or poisoned. This is comparable to a ship sinking and everybody reaching for the lifeboats. The microbe packs its genetic material into many small, very resistant entities called the parasites. Some gametes are not panicking. This one here takes its good time and releases piece by piece parasites into the blood plasma. Let's hear what Dr. Weber had to say about this. Now we see how the cell material is being constricted while it fidgets around and stretches very clearly visible here. Now it is finally free and swims at the 1 o'clock position away, while the other one continues its task while remaining docked to the erythrocyte. I hope this is enough to convince you of what we wanted to illustrate here. A confusion with cell-owned organelles is a pure joke. This statement can only be made by somebody who has no clue of video microscopy. Experiment A. Thick drop of blood, temperature 37 degrees Celsius. We take a blood sample from the patient and follow Dr. Weber's instructions to prove his theory. With the capillary blood, we prepare a native blood spread. We pass the sample through the flame 3 to 4 times. The temperature reaches 140 to 160 degrees Celsius. The blood cells are now cooked and totally dried up. They are definitely dead with all of the existing organelles and vesicles. Then leave the sample to cool down to body temperature. We now use a sterile 1 ml syringe and fill it with 0.3 ml of natrium citrate solution, Fresenius, and 0.7 ml of sterile Ringer solution, Fresenius. We mix the contents of the syringe well by shaking it. We now drip a bigger drop of this solution onto our sample and cover our sample afterwards. We look at the sample through the microscope in an oil emulsion at an aperture of 2 to 2.5. The destroyed blood cells can be seen very nicely without any movement. After a short period of time, something starts to happen, however. The parasites inside of the dead blood cells come back to life. We can see them swimming around vividly and very actively. They are self-sufficient life forms and not apoptotic bodies. All human cell material is 100% dead in this sample. Experiment B is the same procedure as with A, but this time we use a very thin blood spread. Dr. Weber claims that so-called apoptotic bodies are independent life forms. To prove this, we destroy freshly taken blood by heating it up to 140 to 160 degrees Celsius again. But the parasitical microbes prove to be almost indestructible. Despite the heat, they remained unharmed and very alive, as you can see. Under the microscope, we can observe similar results to the ones in experiment A. We can see again the remains of the dead red blood cells and no movement. After the application of the Ringer solution, we can see again parasitical microbes that are clearly independent life forms.
What is the most resilient parasite? A bacteria? A virus? An intestinal worm?
What Mr. Cobb is trying to say?
An idea. Resilient, highly contagious. Once an idea has taken hold of the brain, it's almost impossible to eradicate. An idea that is fully formed, fully understood, that sticks. Right in there somewhere.
Parasites and their inflammatory effects in the gut significantly affect the brain through a bidirectional network known as the gut-brain axis. Inflammation in the intestines can breach the intestinal barrier, causing systemic inflammation throughout the body, and immune signaling such as inflammatory cytokines traveling directly up the vagus nerve into the brain. The inflamed gut also allows the blood-brain barrier to be more permeable, allowing parasites to sneak in, disrupting neural communication, causing brain fog, anxiety, cognitive decline, and an increased risk for neurodegenerative diseases. Dopamine and serotonin are actually produced in the gut, and an infected microbiome produces less dopamine and serotonin, impacting mood and cognitive function. Some parasites cause severe neurological issues when they cross the blood-brain barrier. For example, this parasite, Trypanosoma brucei, journeys from the blood and lymphatic system into the brain, where it causes what is known as sleeping sickness, causing severe sleep disruption with daytime drowsiness, nighttime insomnia, as well as headaches, confusion, poor coordination, hallucination, and mania. Parasites not only disrupt the normal functioning of the mind, but they actually have the audacity to hijack your cognition, leading to rumination or negative thinking, and even to taking decisions that are destructive and lead to self-sabotage. One example is the horse hairworm, which got its name from people believing that hairs that fell from a horse into water would come to life.
A hairworm. It didn't get here on its own. It came out of a little cricket. Don't believe me? Okay. These hairworms are gnarly parasites. They actually control a cricket's mind to get to their home, the water. The hairworm's journey starts innocently enough in a river as an egg. One of many in this long string. The eggs grow into squiggly larvae, which get eaten by a mayfly larva that also lives in the river. And inside the mayfly is exactly where the hairworm needs to be. The hairworm uses this pointy part to burrow into the mayfly's flesh. Then it curls up and waits. Because really, it's not after a mayfly, it's after a cricket. So it sits tight, while the mayfly larva turns into an adult and heads to dry land, where it just might get eaten by a cricket that has no idea what it's in for. Inside the cricket, the hairworm goes at it. The cricket loses its chirp. But the hairworm doesn't kill the cricket because the worm needs a lift back to the water. Crickets usually avoid bodies of water. They're not great swimmers. So the worm takes over, boosting chemicals in the cricket's brain, which make the cricket walk around mindlessly until it happens to reach water. The hairworm makes a break for it.
This parasite also affects praying mantises, grasshoppers, beetles, and even spiders. It will unalive its host in order to reach water where it can fulfill its life cycle and continue breeding. If a parasite's goal isn't to unalive its host, then it is to keep its host alive to achieve its own selfish needs, such as reproduction or shelter.
So these are some of the cicadas that were collected last week down near Champaign, Illinois, in central Illinois, and they have been infected by the so-called zombie fungus, which you would think would kill the cicadas, but actually this fungus just takes over them, and they're still alive and flying around spreading the spores, and with an extremely heightened sexual drive. They become hypersexual, and they just want to mate with any cicada they can find, which is how it is passed on. When they try to mate, they pass the spores on to other cicadas. So it is basically an STD. Only about 10% or less of the cicadas are going to get it, and it fruits, making spores, and it knocks the back 3 segments of the abdomen off and replaces them with a spore packet, which is just kind of fuzzy ball of spores that are hanging on to the back of the insect. And when the back of the insect falls off, it takes the genitalia with it, so the cicadas cannot mate. Here's the fungal plug that causes the cicada to become hypersexual. And it's just a mass of spores that have replaced the back 3 segments of the cicada's abdomen.
If parasites can do this to insects, what could they be doing to humans? Science is beginning to discover some very similar occurrences with human parasites. One protozoan parasite, known as Toxoplasma gondii, has been found to carry high correlations of suicidal tendencies and hypersexuality in the humans it infects. Many people are familiar with this parasite, which causes toxoplasmosis. It's the parasite that causes rats to unalive themselves. Toxoplasma is found to increase activity in nearby limbic regions of sexual attraction when a rat is exposed to cat urine. Humans are an intermediate host and cats are the definitive host. Humans are typically infected from consuming animal products or by infected water or soil contaminated by intermediate hosts or cats. This is the slight truth behind the superstition that pregnant women should stay away from cats. There are many studies now showing how Toxoplasma alters sexual behavior and attractiveness in humans, and how it's highly correlated with psychotic behavior and disorders like schizophrenia.
Today's dog is an intelligent, playful, and gentle companion. This dog's name is Lady. She's a normal puppy. And Trixie may appear to be as normal as Lady, but Trixie has rabies. There are 2 reactions to rabies. The dogs you will now see have what is known as dumb rabies. They are affectionate, quiet, listless. However, a bite from a dog in this condition is just as dangerous as a bite from a dog having wild rabies. Wild rabies is more easily recognized by a foaming at the mouth, wild running, and biting. Rabies is a virus that a dog can catch when bitten by another dog, a coyote, a fox, or other animal that is sick with rabies. Rabies usually travels from a sick animal to another animal, or to a human being through the saliva entering an open cut. The virus enters the open wound and travels along the nerve channels to the brain. The rabies virus in the saliva does not live long in the open air. Rabid dog saliva, which may have dropped to the floor or on your furnishings, is no longer dangerous after it has been exposed for an hour in the open air. Many peculiar things a dog will do that can lead you to suspect he has rabies. In some cases, the dog will act as if he is continuously choking or as if something is stuck in his throat. He will be drooling constantly because the muscles of his throat are paralyzed and he cannot swallow his saliva. Many people speak of this drooling as foaming at the mouth. The dog may do such other odd things as dipping his entire head in a bucket of water while trying to drink. He may become even more affectionate than he has been before, but a loud noise or the slamming of a door may cause him to go into temporary spasms. A dog with rabies might run headlong into the side of a wall. He may even break his teeth trying to bite a tree, a concrete post, or a wire fence.
The dog has often been described as man's best friend, but this animal's close association with humans is the main reason for it being the most important vector in human rabies. Worldwide, more than 95% of all human rabies cases are caused by dog bites. What does rabies look like in dogs and other mammals? Some of the most characteristic symptoms are the following. Many dogs develop a characteristic continuous howl that is neither barking nor baying. This often progresses to a hoarse, croup-like yowl. Provoked and unprovoked aggression typify the rabid dog. If the dog is restrained, it might attack the fences or iron bars. If at large, it may roam aimlessly, fighting and biting anything it makes contact with. Movement and sound often elicit aggressive responses. Restlessness is consistently reported in all species and may be noted as aimless wandering and circling, pawing, scratching, digging, rubbing, licking, chewing, and depilation. Dogs are excited, agitated, they circle, paddle, lie down, and stand up at frequent intervals.
This group of villagers from the backcountry of Iran were all attacked and bitten by a rabid wolf. They have come to a local facility of the Pasteur Institute in order to receive treatment. This man developed symptoms of rabies. On the third day of the disease, he displays a characteristic restlessness and agitation. To avoid swallowing, he drools accumulated saliva into a cup. By the fifth day, salivation is copious and almost continuous. As a precaution against the convulsions which commonly occur in rabies, the patient is secured hand and foot. He displays increasing agitation and delirium. If the acute excitement phase of rabies is survived, paralysis sets in, accompanied by apathy and stupor.
Parasites affect a range of emotions, from heightened aggression to tiredness and listlessness. Parasites disrupt hormonal equilibrium in the body, create defensive stress responses, starve a person of nutrition, which also creates anxiety and emotional fluctuations, and they deplete a person's neurotransmitters like GABA, which is what promotes relaxation in a person. Another popular example of a parasite that causes emotional disturbances is black mold, or Aspergillus niger. This fungus is known to cause depression, anxiety, fatigue, irritability, and mood swings, among many other issues. A little known fact is a common food preservative known as citric acid is actually derived from this same fungus. Most citric acid is this type of modified citric acid that is manufactured from a fermentation process. It's also known as E330. Its safety and long-term effects are still currently being studied. If all things are made up of energy and have a spirit, then the spirit of a parasite would be a demon. This can be validated from what we know about both parasites and demons. Both parasites and demons are nocturnal in nature, and both are most active around 2 or 3 a.m., which is known spiritually as the witching hour. Both parasites and demons need a host to survive. They cannot live without siphoning the energy and nutrients of the host. Parasites, like demons, usually cannot be present in direct sunlight or exposed to UV radiation or ultraviolet light. Many species of parasites die when exposed to direct sunlight. Both have a hidden and covert nature and operate in deception and manipulation. Both are capable of possessing a person's body and mind, both cause confusion and illness, and both feed on lower emotions like fear and shame. For example, a person who is depressed and vibrating at a low emotional state is known to be vulnerable to possession by demonic entities. Likewise, a person who is depressed and vibrating at a low emotional state is susceptible to manipulation by physical parasites to engage in habits that feed their reproduction and disengage the host's immunity against them. A person is either present in their body or they are vacant or creating a vacancy. When someone chooses to, say, engage in drinking alcohol or spirits, as they're also called, They're choosing to vacate the emotion of stress or sadness or anger or sometimes other unconscious emotions, and the alcohol fills up that vacancy temporarily with a feeling of ease or confidence or another pleasant emotion. Usually, however, if a person continues drinking, they black out or don't remember, and it's almost as if an entity takes over them where they become someone entirely different. It's known that people who engage in chronic alcohol consumption have exceedingly high rates of infection with Strongyloides stercoralis and an overgrowth of the opportunistic Candida albicans. These parasites are likely sentient and intelligent enough to encourage the drinking to continue by hijacking the host and manipulating them into maintaining lower emotional states so that they can flourish. Many ancient spiritual traditions were already aware of the correlations between what we consume and the entities that are fed. In Taoism, it was clearly stated that parasites were spiritual entities said to report your misdeeds to heaven, and that they must be starved by bigu fasting, in which a person abstains from the 5 cereals or the 5 grains, which are rice, foxtail millet, broomcorn millet, wheat or barley, and soybeans or legumes. The 3 corpses, or sanji, are spiritual parasites striving to accelerate a person's death and decay, and they cause illnesses. It says that there is an upper corpse, pengju, which resides in the head and causes headaches, eye issues, hair loss, wrinkles, gray hair, and excessive desire. The middle corpse, pengji, resides in the torso and causes gluttony, emotional excess, and damage to the organs. And the lower corpse, pengjiao, resides in the stomach and legs, weakening the body and tempting the host towards vices like lust and sexual obsession. The 3 corpses have 9 corresponding worms, and this is where it gets very interesting. Most of these are recognizable as modern-day parasites. For example, Fu Chong, the ambush worm, is said to sap strength and feed on essence and blood, and this sounds very similar to a hookworm. Hui Chong, the coiling worm, is said to live in pairs above and below the heart, and this is very unique. There's a specific parasite called a schistosome in which the female lives inside the male's body, and it's known as a gynecophoral canal. And these parasites basically live together in a pair for life, and they live and migrate around the heart area. So it's very specific, and it sounds very, very similar to what a schistosome is. And Gei Chong, the diaphragm worm, causes drowsiness, dulls the senses, and induces nightmares. And this specific shape that looks like a cross or a star is very similar to babesia. And babesia is also notorious for causing drowsiness and sleep issues, and many people report having nightmares. Nearly every religion and spiritual practice involves fasting as a method of spiritual purification. From shamans who guide people through dietas as a medicine journey, to Abrahamic religions like Islam, Judaism, and Christianity that practice fasting as a form of spiritual purification and repentance, learning self-discipline, and developing empathy and gratitude. It is said in the Bible that Jesus fasted for 40 days in the wilderness, during which he was tempted by the devil. Demonic possession is also referenced numerous times throughout the Bible.
Jesus, Son of the Most High God, what do you want with me? I beg you, don't punish me.
What is your name?
Legion. Lord, we beg you, do not send us into the abyss. Let us enter into the herd of swine. I'll follow you wherever you go. Let me come with you.
Go back home and tell what God has done for you.
Legion is an example in the Bible of someone who became possessed by demonic spirits and was tormented, living naked and isolated, and cutting himself with stones. Many people in current day are also possessed by demonic spirits. Some people become possessed gradually over time through an incremental decrease in energy and the taking over of the body by demon parasites. This type of possession is often unconscious and involves an involuntary takeover by the demonic entities out of a weakened, debilitated spiritual state from the host. The internal spirit's absence and vacancy allows for the entities to establish dominance over the person's mind and body. This is the type of possession that is often seen in mental illness like schizophrenia or with people who have been under the influence of psychosis-inducing drugs for a long time, like ketamine or methamphetamine. Perhaps the most dangerous and damaging beings who are possessed have consciously made agreements with demonic entities in which they sacrifice the full autonomy of their spirit in order to gain some type of worldly trait like money, power, sexual attraction, or control in general over others. These agreements can happen through the deliberate acquisition of harmful behaviors against others that grow into habit and personality over time. And they sometimes happen through intentional rituals involving black magic and the dark arts. Many people have dealt with energy vampires, and there is an epidemic of what people call narcissists, who are beings that are deeply, unconsciously, or consciously possessed by demonic entities. When a person deals with a human under true narcissistic possession, they experience darkness in their life, like they've been cursed, their finances dry up, they feel like their spirit has been siphoned, their appearance changes, and they can even develop health issues like so-called autoimmune disorders or stomach issues or skin issues. Many people even experience strange occurrences where it feels like they switched places spiritually. The person who takes their energy takes on their characteristics and is somehow inflated, while they take the person's lower emotions and become depressed or deflated. They call this destiny swapping. Such people seem to have an insatiable inner void that constantly seeks to be fed and filled. They seem to be soulless beings, lacking in empathy, ruthless, draining, and in a way that feels beyond human, almost supernatural. These experiences with certain beings feel truly supernatural, almost as though they can psychically pinpoint exactly what vulnerability a person has and then use it to trigger them. They often present themselves as the savior in the beginning in some very supernatural, seductive way, and then somehow are able to wreak absolute havoc on a person's particular pain point. A person often has to purge their inner spiritual toxins by learning to give up seeking external validation through their money, status, relationship status, appearance, or any other ego-based trait, and find a true source of eternal love and self-worth from within.
Did you know that unhealthy relationships can make your body sick? A 2010 study published in JAMA found that people who experienced severe stress or trauma were 36% more likely to develop autoimmune diseases. These include lupus, Crohn's disease, rheumatoid arthritis, thyroid disease. Toxic relationships keep your body in fight or flight, releasing cortisol nonstop, which leads to a suppressed immune system, increased inflammation, leaky gut, hormone imbalances, and autoimmune flare-ups. Proverbs 14:30 says that a heart at peace gives life to the body, but envy rots the bones. Inner turmoil, envy, resentment, bitterness physically damages your body. So it's so important that we manage our relationships and make sure that people are adding to us and not destroying us.
Stress of walking on eggshells all day, every day for years will cause chronic illnesses that take years off of your life. Thank you for this comment, and I'm so sorry. This video this comment is attached to is full of women telling their stories of these chronic illnesses.
When I tell you being with the wrong person will literally make you sick, it will make you physically sick. This is the second time I've got an illness or like a virus in the past 3 weeks. And I'm over my stress limit, and I'm over it. And I just keep getting sick.
There is a popular trend on TikTok with people posting, "What do you mean he drained the life out of you?" before and afters. Each of these people reacted differently to being in parasitic relationships. Some of them lost weight, some of them gained weight, some accelerated in aging, some looked more gray and sickly, reflecting poor health. Universally, they all portray a siphoning of spiritual energy and usually a recovery of that energy when detaching from the parasitic person.
Let me show y'all something real quick. That was me before the narc. This was me after. Look at that. Look at how the life and everything was sucked out of my basically soul.
Like, I look at videos and photos of myself from immediately after the relationship ended, and I look like I've been in a war zone. Like, I look like a intensely traumatized. Like, my face is sallow, my face is hollow. I lost so much weight that I became emaciated. My skin was terrible. And I remember like going back over photos and videos from before. It changes you physiologically. Those high levels of cortisol, the stress hormones, the adrenaline, living in fight or flight, the changes in your skin, the changes in your weight, the changes in your hair. Like psychological and emotional abuse is physical abuse. It shows. And it's funny because I saw this video from this woman who's a dermatologist, and she said that she can always tell when someone's in an abusive relationship just by looking at their skin when they walk into her office.
Is it possible that parasites are not only acquired physically but also spiritually? If someone in a relationship with a parasitic person can become physically sick, does that mean that spiritual infection becomes a physical infection? If a spiritual parasite is a karmic lesson that leads to change and evolution, is a physical parasite also a karmic lesson that leads to change and evolution? Is it a coincidence that the majority of parasites people experience are a product of the exploitation of animals? Are we living symbiotically on the earth, or are we being parasites by over-harvesting and stealing other species' nutrients rather than consuming what is freely given? All relationships are either parasitic or symbiotic. Trees are symbiotic in nature. They nourish soil by covering it with shade, protecting it from extreme heat or too heavy rainfall. The falling leaves decay into humus, enriching the soil with nutrients and improving its structure. Trees release carbon sugars through their roots, attracting beneficial microorganisms that improve soil fertility. Some trees add nitrogen to the soil through symbiotic relationships with some types of bacteria. They improve the soil's water infiltration and drainage through their roots and bring nutrients to the surface. When humans interact with trees and eat their fruit, they are able to play a symbiotic role by replanting the seeds back into the soil to further propagate more trees. In Taoism, Bigu fasting advises to avoid the 5 cereals, which are mainly foods that began during the agricultural age when we deviated from the Tao, or the way things are naturally. In Taoism, when you interfere with nature, you go against the great Tao. Are parasites a way of re-establishing balance with nature? Cultivated crops are not symbiotic in nature. One example is corn. Corn cropping degrades soil health by depleting nutrients from the soil. Corn significantly removes nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium from the soil, requiring artificial fertilizer to maintain fertility. It increases the acidity of the soil and decreases its organic matter. Corn requires an artificial method of soil protection, such as being planted with a cover crop like rye or oats to protect the soil. The typical monocropping of corn reduces the soil's biodiversity. The way animals are domesticated, harvested for their resources, tampered with genetically and surgically, and fed on can also be considered not symbiotic but parasitic. Are we the ones domesticating, or are we the ones being domesticated? Are we the ones creating mental and emotional influence? Or are we being mentally and emotionally influenced? Are we the ones consuming? Or are we the ones being consumed? Is the way we're treating animals creating a karmic cycle of humans becoming domesticated, trapped, mentally unwell, and physically sick? On a macro scale, parasites are agents of control and conformity. Just as people's microbiomes are colonized and overtaken by one or a few species of parasites that dominate and suppress other microbes, so we see in the world a trend of aggressive colonization of countries that have been ravaged by wars. Just as parasites create chronic stress and exhaustion in the body, so we see so many people living under constant stress and anxiety, living an inauthentic, overworked, and exhausting existence. Just as parasites clone themselves with genetically identical offspring, destroying the microbiome's biodiversity, so we can see in the society a boringness and repetition of forms and structures, stifling the natural diversity and creativity of human nature. Life tends to go in one of two ways: creative and giving, or consuming and taking. Most people are naturally driven to be independent, to be creative and artistic. The collective parasitic energy doesn't resonate with this because it's part of a consciousness that is top-down and control-based, obsessed with materialism and consumption. The more we purge these parasitic energies, the more consciousness shifts to allow for more beauty, art, and creativity, individual entrepreneurship and trade that is more collaborative than predatory and parasitic. The more we purge these parasitic energies, the more we can live again in symbiosis and harmony with nature and the animal kingdoms and queendoms. In Eastern spiritual wisdom, animals must reincarnate many times until they attain a human birth where they can ascend into higher states of consciousness. As humans, we are the first species to have an opportunity to evolve beyond the predatory and parasitic tendencies of lower animal natures and step out of the karmic chain of consuming and being consumed. The clearing of parasites on one plane of existence has a ripple effect or domino effect for eliminating parasites on all the other congruent planes of existence. For example, a person can get rid of parasites physically and find that they have also cleared parasites mentally, and their thoughts are naturally more positive. Emotionally, a person can cleanse their parasites by starving them of the emotions and peptides that feed their presence, choosing patience and calm instead of engaging in defensive stress responses and emotional reactivity, practicing forgiveness instead of resentment, having more trust and faith instead of worry, and practicing resting in a peaceful emotional state. Spiritually, a person can cleanse their parasites by cleaning out their spirit, deciding to live more in integrity, creating good karma through good actions, and engaging in spiritual practices and energy work that cleanse the spirit. You can release unclean soul contracts and practice spiritual devotion through prayer and yogic practices. Just like there are destructive demonic spirits attracted to negative, low vibrational energy, there are also helpful angelic spirits that are attracted to high vibrational spiritual states and positive energy. Mentally, a person can cleanse their parasites by practicing observing their thoughts and choosing more positive thoughts and affirmations, starving negative thoughts with silence and presence. Meditation is great for this. Perhaps most importantly, physically, you can starve parasites by changing what you eat and choosing foods that eject them from your body. The only foods that eradicate parasites are raw, living, natural plant foods like fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, herbs, barks, and resins. If you would like to be free of physical parasites, you have to step out of the chain of parasitic behavior on the physical plane. The most optimal and symbiotic diet is a fruit-based diet. It takes time to cleanse the microbiome and remove all the toxins and waste accumulated from years of eating the wrong foods, and doing so is necessary to be able to properly assimilate and digest newly introduced food. Once parasites are ejected, it's natural for a person's palate to change and actually begin enjoying and preferring healthy foods. So parasites are not just a physical, mental, and emotional issue, they're a spiritual issue. When you have something, a sentient being, feeding on you as a host, you are losing your full potential. You're being robbed of your soul experience and of your sovereignty. And so the good news is when you cleanse, you really will notice an amazing shift in your life and in your potential. With the awakening of consciousness, more people are realizing this information and cleansing and finding amazing relief, health, and joy and prosperity by getting these parasites out. So thank you for watching, and please share this with as many people as you think could benefit.